So today we're going to go over the half kneeling cable ER exercise. However, the principles that I'm going to teach you here can be applied to all rotator cuff exercises, whether they be standing, prone, lying on a bench, on a table or anything. Half kneeling like the cable we're doing here with bands or therabands or even dumbbells for that matter. The principles apply to all rotator cuff exercises. So I'm going to get Charlie to move into the half kneeling position. And the first issue that we see with a lot of people that train the rotator cuff is that they compensate with large muscles. What we need to think about when we're training the rotator cuff is we're pretty much just looking for the ball to rotate through the socket. So we're not looking for any larger movements around the actual glenohumeral joints like shoulder flexion or extension. We're mainly just looking for internal and external rotation to occur at the ball in the socket, so the glenohumeral joint. So the first thing that we often see is when people set up is that they either dive down into extension, so their lat takes over. So if you want to just do a rep like that. So they'll start to see that his arm will drop down and we're starting to train who knows what. Another common mistake that we see is compensation through the wrist. So as they come up, they'll extend their wrist and try and use their forearm extensors to move the weight. The third mistake, is using their pec. This is more so when they're doing IR, so internal rotation, but what you'll normally see is that the shoulder will come across as you start to move through. Yeah. So the fourth and final mistake that we quite often see is compensation through the retractors of the shoulder blade. So as we can see, as Charlie starts to move through external rotation, his shoulder blade will dive across and we'll actually start to train some of the rhomboids as we're trying to compensate to lift the weight. You need to remember that the rotator cuff is a very small muscle, so the weight doesn't need to be too heavy. So we're facing back at the front here, go back to that left side. Two little tips or cues that we like to use here at Melbourne Strength Culture to help strengthen the rotator cuff and help to build some competency through external rotation itself is the first thing that we like to train is keeping the hand underneath the elbow. What this allows us to do is it allows us to increase our proprioception around about where the elbow is in free space. So as Charlie starts to move through that external rotation, he can feel if that elbow starts to dive around and whether the lat takes over, the pec, we start to retract or we start to move through the wrist itself. So that is the first cue that we like to use. The second cue that we like to use is having an isometric at the end range. So as Charlie comes up, we like to hold for a second and just make sure that they can feel that posterior capsule or behind the shoulder as he's training this movement. As we can see here, we only have 5 pounds on the stack here. However, it's quite challenging. And again, I just want to reiterate the point that you're training a very small muscle group. You don't need to use large weights. As always, thank you for watching this video. Hopefully we've helped you with your rotator cuff strengthening. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Our links to all our socials and our website are on the description box. As always, happy lifting and welcome to the culture.